There are stories that change your mind and stories that change your breath. This one may change how you walk through the world. Tonight on The Modern Mystic, we enter the quiet brilliance of John Butler meditative farming life, not as a figure in history, but as a mirror to something sacred inside you. If you've ever longed for peace, for clarity, for purpose, their story may become your own. Have you ever felt a kind of silence that lives behind sound? Maybe there was a time when the rush of ordinary life just stopped, when you found yourself wondering what else could be out there. Or maybe you've known days when your mind churned with worries while your heart ached for something softer. That's exactly what John Butler meditative farming life once felt too. From an ordinary field to an unexpected stillness, his story is an invitation, not to someone else's journey, but to the quiet presence within you. In the hush between each sentence, you might start to sense that what drew him is calling you too. The same way the earth holds a root while letting green things grow, this story offers shelter to the part of you waiting for light. We often search for wisdom in loud places, books, screens, teachings, the voices of those who seem to know more. But what if wisdom lives in a slower kind of rhythm? John's life unfolded one breath at a time, closer to the ground, closer to himself. His deepest realizations did not arrive as thunder. They came like morning light creeping across a field, almost invisible until you look twice. Tonight, you don't have to do anything special. There's nothing you need to understand, fix, or strive for. Just let your shoulders drop. Let your breath find its way in and out. If your thoughts wander, notice how even wandering can be gentle. Even if you drift off before we finish, this story will keep whispering to the part of you that's ready to remember. There are stories that change your mind and stories that change your breath. This one may change how you walk through the world. You found your way to the modern mystic tonight, maybe out of habit, or maybe out of something you can't quite name yet. Here we travel not on highways and timelines, but through the silent spaces under memory, where the most quietly luminous lives leave their gentle marks. This isn't just story time. This is rest for your soul and an invitation to drop beneath the surface with me. A friendly voice, nothing more, just here as the darkness folds around you. Tonight, we enter the quiet brilliance of John Butler, his meditative farming life, not as a figure in history, but as a mirror to something sacred inside you. The world might know him as a farmer, a seeker, a man who touched the earth and listened, and in that listening became a kind of doorway for us all. But for this time, let's put aside all titles and simply rest with the human that lived beneath them. If you've ever longed for peace, for clarity, for purpose, their story may become your own. Have you ever stood in a field at dawn, breath catching in your chest at the first quiet beams of light? John felt that too. Maybe there was a time when everything around you seemed silent, only to realize that your own heart was making the loudest noise of all. This, too, shaped his path. You are not alone in your searching, not strange, not late, not too much. Even someone whose calmness seems impossible once yearned, faltered, reached out for answers in the hush of night. There is something unhurried about stories like this. You don't need to remember every word. You don't even need to stay awake. What matters is the slow imprint, the warmth of presence, the gentle suggestion that things can be different tomorrow, not because the world changes, but because you meet life with a new breath. That's the gift John Butler brings to us, a story lived softly, yet deeply, like roots sinking silently under the earth. Maybe right now, you're sinking into your bed, body slowly letting go, thoughts swirling like leaves across water. This is a good place to begin. Feel the air around you, the subtle weight of your own hands, the familiar creak of the chair, or the softness of the sheets. John's story is woven from these same small details, the feel of earth under your skin, the rhythm of mornings that arrive whether you're ready for them or not. As we drift deeper, let yourself remember there's nothing you have to do to deserve rest. There's nothing you must solve, fix, or prove tonight. Even if you drift off before we finish, this story will keep whispering to the part of you that's ready to remember. There are stories that change your mind and stories that change your breath. This one may change how you walk through the world. Tonight on The Modern Mystic, we enter the quiet brilliance of John Butler meditative farming life, not as a figure in history, but as a mirror to something sacred inside you. If you've ever longed for peace, for clarity, for purpose, their story may become your own. Have you ever felt a hush moving through your day, a moment when the noise fell away and the world itself seemed to pause? Maybe you've walked through a field or a garden, feeling the grounding of your own body, hearing the whisper of your own breath. Maybe there was a time when every part of you just wanted to rest, to stop running, to let the earth hold you for a while. That's exactly what John Butler once felt too. His life, before the quiet, before the wisdom, began not in grand pronouncements or wild visions, but in a simple longing, the sense that something gentle waited beneath all the noise, the feeling that life could be lived with more presence, that the world was not just a blur of seasons, routines, and silent questions, but a tapestry of stillness and movement, breath and surrender. John Butler's journey isn't written in ancient scripts or painted with dramatic colors. It breathes in slow, deliberate rhythms, the cadence of soft footsteps across wet grass, the warmth of early light spilling into a cool morning barn, the echo of a life shaped by earth and silence. His story is the sound of your own heartbeat, remembering its natural pace. It's the gentle surrender into not knowing, the quiet opening into the possibility that, maybe, peace is less something you chase and more something you let catch you. Even if you drift off before we finish, this story will keep whispering to the part of you that's ready to remember, the part that recognizes your own longing in the steady hands of a farmer, in the soft gaze of a mystic who never sought to be one. A story that doesn't rush or demand answers, a story that moves at the speed of trust, at the pace of stillness emerging from the soil of a long life gently tilled. So let your body unwind with each breath. Notice the space you're sitting or lying in. Let the story of John Butler feel less like an ancient tale and more like a mirror, a warm current of presence flowing beside you tonight. As we travel together, there's nothing you need to hold, just a soft listening, an invitation to feel your own pulse slow to the rhythm of the earth, guided by a man who learned to live close to the ground. Stay for as long as you wish, and even if your eyes close, the story will keep moving like a river under the moonlight. Slower now, softer, as you remember what it feels like to truly rest in the presence of the sacred. There are stories that change your mind and stories that change your breath. This one may change how you walk through the world. Tonight on The Modern Mystic, we enter the quiet brilliance of John Butler meditative farming life, not as a figure in history, but as a mirror to something sacred inside you. If you've ever longed for peace, for clarity, for purpose, their story may become your own. Maybe you've felt it in those in-between moments, where for a moment everything slows. The world hushes, and underneath all the noise, you catch something gentle, softer than thought, more patient than time. Most of us chase a kind of peace, not always sure where to begin. Sometimes you think you'll find it in silence, in nature, in a hand resting on the soil, in breath on a window pane. But there's always something. The hurry, the worry, the loop of wondering if you've missed something important about what it means to be really alive, the weight you carry that no one sees. Have you ever felt like you belonged to the earth and to mystery all at once? Maybe when you walked alone through a field at dusk, and maybe on a morning when the mist touched the grass and the world felt both closer and larger. That's exactly what John Butler meditative farming life once felt too. He isn't a saint or a myth, just a person, quietly listening, learning, stumbling, and beginning again. If you've ever wondered if there's a wisdom hidden in the plain days, if you've ever wondered if stillness is possible, even with everything swirling outside and inside you, maybe tonight, you'll find your own way of listening. The land he worked, the seasons he moved through, they were never just background. They taught him something about presence, an ordinary presence, so ordinary it becomes extraordinary when you finally sit and let yourself feel it. John's story isn't about fame or perfect answers. It's about choosing to notice the gentle rhythm underneath it all. With every seed planted, every mistake, every quiet ache and unseen hope, he learned to meet the world with eyes that don't just look, but actually see. Nothing fancy, just the courage to be here, fully, to let the mystery seep in between the rows of wheat and the space between each breath. So maybe, as you settle into this night, you'll hear something that feels like home, something that invites you to slow down, soften, remember. Even if you drift off before we finish, this story will keep whispering to the part of you that's ready to remember. There are stories that change your mind and stories that change your breath. This one may change how you walk through the world. Tonight on The Modern Mystic, we enter the quiet brilliance of John Butler meditative farming life, not as a figure in history, but as a mirror to something sacred inside you. If you've ever longed for peace, for clarity, for purpose, their story may become your own. Have you ever felt the ache for stillness in a restless world? Maybe there was a time when you listened for something deeper, beyond the noise, even if you didn't know what you were seeking. That's exactly what John Butler meditative farming life once felt too. There's something about the earth, the feel of soil between your fingers, the hush of first light across open fields that invites a silent knowing, a secret that stays just under the surface, waiting for you to become quiet enough to hear it. It can be hard to find quiet, the kind that seeps down into your bones and reminds you that you belong. Maybe you know that feeling, the subtle tension that sits beneath your ribs, whispering there's more to life. If only you could touch it. John's story is a breathing invitation into that place. He was not born extraordinary, nor did peace come easy. He carried his own restlessness, his own questions, as you do. The difference is the way he chose to walk with those questions, to lean into the silence rather than fill it, to let time slow instead of chasing after it. If you've ever wondered if there's a gentler way to live, if deep within you there's a longing for a life that feels rooted and bright, this story is for you. John's hands have turned the earth, his heart has wandered through shadows, and his eyes have learned to notice what others pass by. That is the quiet brilliance we explore together tonight, not as distant admirers, but as fellow travelers, looking for the soft illumination that can wake us even as we rest. As you listen, whether you're curling up in bed, setting the day's weight aside, or simply letting this story echo in your heart, I invite you to enter the still field within yourself, the part that already knows peace, but maybe forgot how to feel it. What you seek is also seeking you. The gentle presence found in John's journey is alive in you, ready to be remembered. Even if you drift off before we finish, this story will keep whispering to the part of you that's ready to remember. There are stories that change your mind and stories that change your breath. This one may change how you walk through the world. Soften your gaze wherever you are. Maybe you're lying back, blanket pulled to the chin, senses eased by night. Maybe you've had one of those days. It all blurs at the edges, and you long for something quieter, a little closer to the center of things. It's here in the gentle hush you find yourself listening in the half-light to something older than words, softer than thought. Tonight on The Modern Mystic, we enter the quiet brilliance of John Butler, meditative farming life, not as a figure in history, but as a mirror to something sacred inside you. He is known by some as a farmer, by others as a spiritual elder. But for the next while, he's not anyone's label. He is a doorway you can step through, towards stillness, towards peace, towards yourself. You don't need any special knowledge, no previous beliefs, just a willingness to relax and let the story slip into that place between waking and dreams. If you've ever longed for peace, for clarity, for purpose, their story may become your own. Maybe for you, there have been days when everything felt loud, heavy, a heartbeat too fast, a mind circling with questions that go nowhere. Maybe there was a time you walked alone beneath an endless sky, and wished to feel you belonged to something deeper. That's exactly what John Butler, meditative farming life, once felt too. There were days when the fields looked empty, the world too wide, the self too small. Maybe you have touched that ache before, the silent wish for understanding, the longing for a gentle rhythm in the bones of existence. Tonight, together, we step quietly into his story, not to study or admire, but to remember. Underneath every event, each breath, each choice, is a steady pulse of presence. A knowing that what is most true can be found now, in this softness, in the next breath you take. The hush that John Butler grew to cherish, the simplicity that became his strength, do not belong only to him. Even now, in darkness or stillness, they wait within you, ready to unfold. If your eyes close before the end, don't worry. Even if you drift off before we finish, this story will keep whispering to the part of you that's ready to remember. It's not about staying awake. It's about arriving inwardly again and again whenever you need it. So sink in. Let your breath find a slower pace. The world will be waiting when you return, but for now, you are invited to listen, to remember, to simply be together in the quiet company of John Butler's meditative farming life. There are stories that change your mind and stories that change your breath. This one may change how you walk through the world. Tonight on The Modern Mystic, we enter the quiet brilliance of John Butler meditative farming life, not as a figure in history, but as a mirror to something sacred inside you. If you've ever longed for peace, for clarity, for purpose, their story may become your own. Have you ever felt the hush of a morning field, mist still clinging to the soil, your shoes pressing into earth that remembers more lifetimes than anyone alive? Maybe there was a time when the world asked too much, and silence became a kind of prayer. That's exactly what John Butler meditative farming life once felt too. The journey we're about to enter doesn't chase achievement. It doesn't sound like a flock of voices or bright ideas. Instead, it sounds like patience, like knowing yourself by the rhythm of quiet footsteps. John's life is the feeling of cool grass underfoot, the hush just before dew turns to daylight, the long inhalation of a spirit that lets go, little by little, with every new season. You might sense the soft gravity of his story, a gentle magnetic pull, reminding you that peace doesn't wait for you at the finish line. It walks with you through muddy boots and ordinary joys, through doubts, heartbreaks, and the hush of evening. John's story isn't about escape, it's about presence, about gathering wisdom one breath at a time, in rows of crops, in silent awe, in touch with a world that quietly teaches those who are willing to listen. Even if you drift off before we finish, this story will keep whispering to the part of you that's ready to remember. There are stories that change your mind and stories that change your breath. This one may change how you walk through the world. Tonight on The Modern Mystic, we enter the quiet brilliance of John Butler meditative farming life, not as a figure in history, but as a mirror to something sacred inside you. If you've ever longed for peace, for clarity, for purpose, their story may become your own. Have you ever felt the ache just beneath the surface that maybe the world's pace is not the same as your soul's? Maybe there was a day when you stepped outside and the early light made you pause, made you want to trade the noise for something simpler, quieter. That's exactly what John Butler once felt too, out in the fields, in wide skies and soil-rich hands, seeking answers not in words, but in the quiet language that only earth could teach. When your mind runs restless, the heart remembers this longing. Sometimes in the softness of dawn, sometimes in a pause between one breath and the next. This longing is not just John's, it's ours. It's the search for peace, for the kind of clarity that doesn't come from thinking harder, but from listening deeper. Most of us spend whole years drifting through the noise. The world expects this. Maybe you've been busy, drawn by expectation after expectation. But here, tonight, as you settle under the covers, there's nothing more expected of you. No needing to impress, no having to strive. The only thing you need to do is listen or simply to let go. John Butler's story isn't loud. It doesn't demand applause. It doesn't shine with fame or flash with drama. Instead, it invites you inward. It whispers to the part of you that hungers for stillness, wonders if peace can outlast the world's hurry, and wants a reason to trust your own quietness again. This is a story about dirt under the fingernails, a sky overhead that speaks without words, and an ordinary man who chose to let the land teach him how to be. If you've ever walked at night and felt for a heartbeat like you belonged to something bigger, if you've ever carried questions into the silence, wishing someone could understand, tonight maybe you'll find yourself here. Not with quick answers, but with presence. Not with rules, but with relief. John's way was never about getting everything right, but about turning toward something soft and wise within himself, and letting that be enough. Maybe you're already drifting a little, eyes heavy, thoughts softening. That's okay. Even if you drift off before we finish, this story will keep whispering to the part of you that's ready to remember, ready to return to something true, as natural and patient as growing seeds in spring. Tonight, the story is yours, and you don't have to do anything at all. Just let yourself be here, receiving what wants to come. The rest will follow in its own time. Long before the farm became a place of meditation, the world around John was already whispering. He was born in England, not in a city, but far enough from the tangled rush to let the land shape his heartbeat. Childhood glimmers as a memory of wide horizons. The air always seemed fresher in the open. The wind carried its own kind of comfort. At home, a gentle seriousness surrounded each gesture, every meal, every silent walk through the grass. As a boy, John learned quickly that words explained little. What he really understood came in the space between. There's a kind of loneliness that people don't talk about, and it doesn't always look sad. Sometimes it's just the awareness that the world keeps moving, and you're standing alone with a question that won't let go. John felt this often, moments in the field, hands buried in soil, feeling not just the earth, but his own longing to belong. It wasn't loneliness for people, but for meaning. There was a restlessness beneath the ordinary, each day carrying both comfort and a silent ache. Dawn came early on the farm. The house hummed quietly, routines repeated in gentle rhythm. There was always work to do, mending, feeding, sorting. Yet under the practical, John sensed more. As he grew, he noticed that silence was everywhere. In the pause before a chore began, in the hush of afternoon sun on an empty path, in the sound of his own breath when dusk crept in. This silence held weight. It hinted that something sacred hid behind the ordinary scenes. Curiosity grew in him, almost secret, almost sacred. Why did stillness feel so alive? Why did the world seem full, even when nothing was happening? Sometimes John would linger by a window or stand by the hedgerow after the dinners were cleared, searching the sky for a sign, a softness. Sometimes he found it, and sometimes just the ache of waiting remained. He wondered about purpose, about God, about what it would mean to be truly known. He wondered if other people felt this way, or if they hurried on, unaware of all the quietness waiting beneath the day. Much of what John learned, he learned by doing and by listening. His family worked hard. There was not much talk of dreams or mystical things, but the land itself felt wise. Cows grazing were a form of prayer. Seeds sown were promises in patience. Year after year, the same cycles repeated, yet nothing felt wasted. Even in small disappointments, a poor harvest, a missed kindness, there seemed to be a lesson, though he couldn't name it. Sometimes John felt apart, like the world ran on a current he couldn't fully join. He moved through childhood with a balanced mix of comfort and longing, accepting both. Nights brought the most stillness. Under the generous stretch of stars, he would sit outside, breath slow, listening beyond the edge of familiar sound. Was that God, or just the world breathing? He wasn't sure. But the ache, the question, the quiet fascination, all these would follow him into years yet to come. As he grew older, what started as longing became practice, not of religion, but of listening. Through each season the farm echoed his heart, sometimes tangled, often patient, always quietly alive. Life taught him that beneath struggle, and even beneath joy, something steady remained. He began to trust this, to seek it more, to let the shape of his own soul echo the gentle rhythm of the land. Long before names like farming mystic or teacher could fit, John was simply a boy asking silent questions and finding, in the soft hush of each moment, that the world sometimes answered itself. The first real spark for John didn't come like a flash from outside. It was more like a shift, a slow unwinding of what he thought had to be toward what already was. He was still a young man, with roughened hands and weather-shaped skin. Most days looked the same. Tending fields, repairing, moving through old patterns. But then, one morning, the difference arrived quietly. He'd woken early as always. The air was cool, and his mind, for once, felt clear. As he stepped onto the damp grass, something felt different, not outside, but inside. He noticed the way the light fell across the fields, the way each sound seemed softer. His own breath felt spacious, like a doorway had opened inside his chest. For the first time, John didn't fill the silence with thought or worry. He just stood in it. The world wasn't asking anything from him. It was simply there, and so was he. This might seem small, but for John, it changed everything. The spark wasn't about seeing angels or hearing voices. It was about noticing that underneath every task, every day, there was a presence deeper than doing. He started to pay attention when he worked. Pulling weeds, he noticed the way roots yield, the way soil clings in slow trust. Mending fences, he heard the rhythm of hammer on wood as a real kind of heartbeat, steady, unhurried, enough. The more he listened, the more he noticed a pattern. Whenever he slowed down, the edges of things softened. Worry lost its grip. Doubt faded. There was a quality, almost like grace, in letting every action emerge from stillness. Sometimes, even in the hardest chores, a curious peace floated through. It was as if the land itself was teaching him how to move, how to breathe, not with tension, but with trust. At first, these moments were rare, but John began to crave them. Instead of fighting the silence, he welcomed it. He experimented with moving slower, with listening longer before acting. The change affected everything. Relationships with others grew gentler. Mistakes didn't bite so hard. Even disappointment softened. People noticed something in him, a quieter way of being, a patience that felt real and earned. John didn't talk about this at first. It seemed too simple and perhaps too private. Besides, the world didn't reward slowness or stillness. It rewarded getting things done. Yet over time, silence became his teacher. He realized that simple presence had the power to change every part of how he lived. He was beginning to sense that stillness wasn't a luxury, but a source, not a place to escape to, but a way to be, no matter what the day brought. The first spark, then, was the birth of this awareness. It didn't erase struggle or longing, but layered everything with a new kind of possibility. There was more, more than survival, more than getting by, more than the world's narrow expectations. Something within and around was patient, gentle, and quietly transformative. And John knew, in his own way, that he wanted to live the rest of his life in conversation with that presence. Of course, life didn't pause for revelation. Struggle found John like it finds all of us. His path was never free from turmoil. Storms hit the farm, crops failed, relationships faltered. There were years when hope seemed as thin as frost on the fields in early March. The outside world wanted speed, progress, and always more, but John kept returning to the slowness that had first grounded him. This was not easy. Inside, the sacred struggle felt lonely. Letting go of old patterns meant risking misunderstanding. Friends sometimes found him odd, too quiet, too inward. Business partners questioned his methods. Why slow down when the world was racing ahead? Why let stillness lead the way when every sign pointed toward urgency? John didn't have all the answers. He just knew that every time he pushed too hard, he lost connection to the gentle grace at his center. The challenge was real. There were mornings he woke heavy with doubt. Did any of this matter? Would the world ever make room for such simple living? On days when the land disappointed, when rain ruined a season's work, or illness crept in, it was tempting to give up. It was tempting to let frustration harden into cynicism. John wrestled with feeling unseen, with wanting the world to move at his rhythm, and with the pain that comes from ordinary loss. In the quiet, struggle changed shape. Sometimes it was just the ache of growing older. Sometimes it was the sting of feeling left out or left behind. He longed for something certain, but the world rarely offered it. Instead, pain became a teacher. Mistakes taught patience. Frustration asked for even more presence. In the middle of real, lived disappointment, John kept coming back to the simplest practices. Feel the ground beneath your feet, breathe, listen, try again. Even when he failed, even when progress seemed invisible, the presence didn't leave. There was always a quality in the ordinary, a softness after every storm. The sacred struggle was here, not to glorify suffering, but to reveal the gift held inside it. Hard days deepened John's longing. Bad seasons humbled him. Loss asked for more realness, less pretense. Shame faded, replaced by honest questions. And over time, experience turned even the hardest memories into fertile ground. If you've ever wondered if the struggle means you're off track, or if hardship is a sign you should give up, John's life offers another way to see it. Struggle can be part of the soil from which new life grows. It does not have to be glamorous or heroic. It is enough to keep showing up gently and trust that even in pain, something is quietly growing roots beneath the surface. A true change did not arrive with fanfare. It came on a day like any other. John was sitting in silence, hands folded, the faint scent of earth filling the room. He was older now. Some dreams had faded, others had changed shape. The world was louder, maybe even a little harsher. But inside, he felt a peculiar stillness, larger, more generous. On that day, he saw clearly that he had to make a choice. He could keep chasing satisfaction in the next harvest, the next outcome, the next approval, or he could give himself fully to the presence that had always been waiting quietly for his trust. It wasn't dramatic. There was no sudden enlightenment, just a simple decision to let the moment matter. He stood outside, feet in the fading grass. The wind was crisp. For the first time, John realized he was no longer waiting for the world to change. Instead, he understood that this quiet, loving awareness in the dirt, in the cold, in his own breath was enough. More than enough, really. He stopped asking for proof. He stopped measuring his worth by the world's clock. The choice to live in presence, to listen, to follow the rhythm of nature, this became his profound commitment. This turning point didn't make life perfect. There were still challenges, uncertainty, small failures. But there was a peace, too, a kind of wholeness that had nothing to do with achievement. John learned to rest more deeply, to labor without strain, to listen for the voice beneath words. He no longer needed anyone to approve of his way. The miracle was in allowing his life to be simple, sacred, and enough, exactly as it was. Turnings keep unfolding. Each season brought a new lesson. Aging slowed his body. Sorrow softened his edges. Joy grew quieter but deeper. The true shift was never an event, but a willingness to be present with whatever arrived, trusting that the land and life have their own intelligence. John's turning point was not a break with the world, but a deeper homecoming to it, a decision not to resist the ordinary, but to welcome it, to find real spirituality not in escape, but in surrender to each moment as it came. What changed? Simply this: he no longer clung to becoming. He rested quietly in the sacredness of being. After changing his life's rhythm, John began to live in gentle alignment with what he'd learned. His days were ordinary on the surface, tending the farm, sitting in silence, walking through slow dawns, but everything was different underneath. There was no striving, only a willingness to notice. Dawn became an invitation, not a rush. He worked the land with gratitude, seeing each task as a form of meditation. The turning of soil, once purely practical, now felt intimate, his palms sensing life's hidden pulse below the surface. There was a different quality to each interaction, less judgment, more presence. He greeted people with attention, not just politeness. Listening became more important than speaking. John's movements became mindful without any performance. He ate slowly, tasted every bite as if it was his first and last. Chores were not to be endured, but inhabited. He allowed both quiet and noise to simply arrive and pass through. Family and friends sometimes joined him, and if not, he met them where they were, with acceptance. Sitting in stillness was not about escaping from the world, but about letting the world arrive exactly as it was. He learned to let go of the need to fix or change. Sometimes he noticed how the light fell through the kitchen window, how his breath made fog in the cold, or how the rhythm of his heart matched the peaceful ticking of the clock. All the while, presence expanded in the smallest moments. Over years, this gentle alignment shaped his inner and outer world. Stress lost its edge. In moments of confusion, he paused, returning to the steadiness beneath every thought. Failures stung, but didn't stick. Achievements became less important than the daily trust that life, however it appeared, was complete in itself. John's presence touched others, not by preaching, but simply by being. He moved gently, spoke quietly, and offered his attention as a kind of blessing. This way of living wasn't about rules, but about rhythm. Each day, the farm revealed itself as both teacher and friend. The rhythm of chores, seasons, breathing, all echoed the bigger lesson. Everything changes, but presence is always available. In the end, living in alignment wasn't about control or achievement. It was about presence, again and again, even in the middle of the ordinary. Mastery for John meant embodying patience, not as an idea, but as a lived, breathing quality. One moment stands out. It was late autumn. The ground was cold. The air tasted of wood smoke. He was repairing a fence, a job he'd done 100 times. A younger man might have hurried, trying to beat the dock. John didn't. He worked at a slow, steady pace, letting each movement be whole and complete. As he paused for a breath, he felt the world catch up. His mind was quiet. There was no rush, no push. Hammer in hand, he noticed. His presence had become soft and patient, able to meet life exactly as it was. Rain clouds gathered, but he wasn't troubled. A bird sang, then another stopped by. Each moment was allowed to be itself. Over time, this patience spread into every part of his life. Waiting was no longer an annoyance. Delays became chances to rest inside himself. Hard times no longer caused panic. They became invitations to pause, listen, and proceed in alignment. Even in conversation, John offered patience. He listened as if the other person was the most important part of his world, and in this way his relationships deepened. Mastery of patience also meant letting things go. Fences didn't always stand. Crops failed again, as they sometimes must. John faced each setback with the same open, grounded presence. In embracing what was, instead of mourning what wasn't, he discovered a fullness that can't be taken away. John never claimed any of this was easy. Mastery came through thousands of humble days, mistakes, forgiveness, small beginnings. He let the land be the teacher, the seasons carry their wisdom, and patience grow, seed by seed, into a way of being entirely his own. If there were hidden rules guiding John's days, they never needed to be named. He woke when it was time, sometimes before the sun, sometimes after. What mattered wasn't what the clock dictated, but what was needed. There were no rigid plans, yet somehow everything got done. He trusted that every moment held its own guidance. When something failed, he didn't rush to correct. He let things unfold, sensing the subtle currents beneath appearance. He allowed himself to feel disappointment, but never let it close his heart. This quiet acceptance was a practice, a kind of invisible law. John lived in sync with the world around him. Decisions happened slowly. If a task felt wrong, he paused, waited, asked inwardly. There was a rhythm, breath in, breath out, giving and receiving, doing and resting. He met each day not with willpower, but with presence. Small acts of kindness, a pause for gratitude, a willingness to see the sacred in the everyday, all were part of this code. This way of living didn't require belief, only openness. He wasn't perfect. Frustration and doubt still visited. But underneath, John trusted the intelligence of life itself. He moved through confusion with patience, through certainty with humility. The hidden law was trust, trust in the land, in the quiet, and in the mysterious guidance found only in stillness. If their soul could speak into your night right now, here's what it might say. Move gently. Life isn't a problem to solve, but a rhythm to join. Let yourself rest, even inside the rush. Notice how breath slows everything. There's a wisdom waiting underneath the surface, yours to hear if you listen. Don't be afraid of not knowing. Sometimes it is the question, not the answer, that opens your heart. Let wonder be your guide, not a burden. You don't have to earn your place in the world. Just breathe. Be present. You're already home. Let your mistakes teach you how to be gentle with yourself, with others, with the earth. Forgive quickly. Begin again as many times as you need. Nothing is wasted. The ordinary moments are the true miracles. And above all, trust the stillness that lives inside you. Even when everything outside is uncertain, inside there is a steadiness, a light, a silence, a knowing. You have access to it any time, no matter where you are. Let each breath remind you there is more to you and to this life than you'll ever need to prove. As we come to the end of tonight's presence, nothing is needed, nothing is forced. Just rest in the company of this simple reminder. I walk with light. I remember the stillness. This is also my path. Let the words soften into the background. I walk with light. Breathing in, you touch something steady and ancient. Breathing out, you join a gentler rhythm. Whatever you carry tonight, let it ease a little. I remember the stillness. There is nothing to achieve in this moment. Simply by being, you're already part of something sacred, something enough. Maybe you'll forget every detail of the story before morning comes. That's okay. Presence does not depend on memory. In the quiet between waking and sleep, let this settle into your bones. This is also my path. Not a journey of distance, but of remembering what matters. Each time the mind wanders, return softly. I walk with light. I remember the stillness. This is also my path. And as sleep carries you beyond this story, trust that something gentle is awakening inside you, just as it did for John Butler, just as it can for all of us. Let presence hold you through the dark until morning finds you again. You are exactly where you need to be. Good night. There are stories that change your mind and stories that change your breath. This one may change how you walk through the world. Tonight on The Modern Mystic, we enter the quiet brilliance of John Butler meditative farming life, not as a figure in history, but as a mirror to something sacred inside you. Maybe right now you're searching or just listening, or maybe you're barely holding on, hoping to find some space where your soul can land softly for the night. If you've ever longed for peace, for clarity, for purpose, their story may become your own. Have you ever felt the world move too fast, when even the quiet doesn't feel like rest? Maybe there was a time when you stood in a wide field or sat in your car after a long day and wished for something quieter than thought, something honest and whole that needed nothing from you but your presence. That's exactly what John Butler meditative farming life once felt too. He isn't the kind of mystic who needed mountains or temples. His field was his temple, soil under his fingernails, breath moving with the wind, eyes watching seeds become life. What grew outside grew inside, and what healed inside rippled out to the world around him. John grew up the silent observer, the kind most people pass by, never guessing the world of wonder he carried behind his careful eyes. He felt the thrum of life in every living thing, but the noise of daily life, the ache of feeling unseen, that weighed on him. The longing for peace wasn't some far-off echo. It pulsed just beneath his skin. If you ever wondered if you really belong in a world that can feel loud or restless or shallow, tonight, his story may remind you you are not alone in that longing. Tonight, as the lights dim and your body surrenders to gravity, let this story become your gentle permission to remember yourself. Remember the part of you that doesn't have to fix or change anything, the part that is enough, that is still, even as the world keeps spinning. Even if you drift off before we finish, this story will keep whispering to the part of you that's ready to remember. From wherever you are, just let your breath soften. Let the night carry you, and let's begin. There are stories that change your mind, and stories that change your breath. This one may change how you walk through the world. Tonight on The Modern Mystic, we enter the quiet brilliance of John Butler meditative farming life, not as a figure in history, but as a mirror to something sacred inside you. If you've ever longed for peace, for clarity, for purpose, their story may become your own. Have you ever felt the world moving too fast around you? Maybe you've noticed the way your thoughts keep running, even as you stand completely still. Or maybe there was a time when silence felt like an empty room, waiting for something to move inside it. That's exactly what John Butler meditative farming life once felt too. Tonight, we don't chase after meaning. We let it walk alongside us, step by gentle step. John Butler grew up far from spotlights and noise. His world began with the land, the gentle roll of English fields, the hush of early mornings, the soft stir of wind through tall grass. There are people who find life in cities, but John's earliest memories are stitched into earth and sky. He didn't belong to crowds. He belonged to rhythm, the same way roots belong to soil. Maybe you know that longing, the sense that all the answers are out there, but your heart still aches for a home you can't quite name. If so, breathe in with me, /BR. There is a part of you, the silent watcher, that has always walked ahead of your fears, past your worries, into a space where only listening remains. Even now, as the room grows softer, you might sense the echoes of your own longing. Is it the memory of a place where you once felt safe, or a gentle hope that peace might be simpler than you ever imagined? John's journey begins right there, in that tender space where wanting meets wonder. His life wasn't dramatic, but it was full, the fullness of being, not doing. If you wait with me and listen, if you slow your breath and imagine the feel of dew on your hands, the quiet of clouds rolling by overhead, the hum of insects in a golden field, that's where his story lives. Not in the noise, but in the noticing. Maybe you question if these gentle stories can truly matter. Sometimes we need reminders that the world is still stitched together by small kindnesses, patient hands, and silent prayers. John Butler's days became prayers in motion, a farmer sowing seeds and a seeker looking for the root of peace. So tonight, we don't travel far. We settle in. We invite the living rhythm of breath to guide us, to remember that every moment is a chance to find stillness within movement and meaning within the most ordinary day. Even if you drift off before we finish, this story will keep whispering to the part of you that's ready to remember. If you're ready, let your body sink a little deeper now. Trust these words and trust the quiet inside you. John's story is not just his. It might be the story of every soul who longs for wholeness, who aches to live in harmony, and who,